Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives. And I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Got a great show for you today. I hope you feel like it's a great show today. But we're going to be talking about guilt programming and doing what's right for ourselves, doing the right thing by us. You know, it's interesting because there's this issue, this inner battle, and many of us are dealing with it. Many of us are feeling guilt. We felt the guilt programming. We felt it for a long time. Many of us were even raised in a family dynamic where guilt was the main deal. Guilt was the main thing, right? We felt guilt. And so in today's show, I want to talk about it. I want to reveal the guilt programming. How often is the guilt programming creating havoc in your life? How often are you worried that you are not doing the right thing by other people, situations, and circumstances? And how often do you put yourself on the back burner? This is interesting because a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it. We don't even realize we're doing it. And what happens when we do it? What is the actual breakdown of the situation? How does it impact us? How do we feel? How do we deal with it? And how do we move on? And so we have some really great stuff to talk about in today's show. We're going to break down the programming. And the interesting part about this, and this is something I really want to stress in a positive way, is that, you know, the programming, in all honesty, is the same across the board, no matter if it's guilt programming. I mean, some of you actually, I'm going to do an upcoming show on and some YouTube videos on. Someone reached out to me today, early this morning, and said, you know, hey, I find myself in this loop with my best friend. She's in this toxic relationship. She's been in it for a while. She keeps going back. I find myself like, you know, she asked me for advice, but she never really takes it. But it's also starting to impact our relationship. And that in itself is of a program. We find ourselves doing the same thing over and over again with the same people. I remember I was in a program with a friend of mine years ago where every crazy thing he did, he would come back and tell me about. It was like badge of honor, you know, and in the beginning, it was kind of interesting because some of the stuff was pretty crazy. And I was like, wow, really? That happened? But eventually I realized that it was getting more and more and more intense. And this was going to impact him in a safety situation at some point in life. And so I realized that me programmed to listen to these things happening was not actually helping him. It was actually hurting him. And so very interesting. We're going to be talking about programming today. We're going to be really focusing on the guilt program. But we're going to focus on other programming too, because it all comes from the same thing. It all stems from a lot of our upbringing and childhood. It stems from the way we were raised. It stems from what we see our parents do and what we see our siblings and how that's just how it happens. I wish I could tell you there was a different way. I wish I could tell you that, you know, we were beamed this way and there was some, you know, beam of light that hit us and created this program, but it's not true. It's really what we see and how we interpret things and how we see the world and what impacts us. So let's talk about that. And I want to talk about it because, you know, I can always use a real life story and I can use my own stories. And so I put myself out there a lot, right? Which is not a big deal because I think that the only way that we can connect with one another is when we're being honest and transparent. And, you know, recently, many of y'all know that my mother was dealing with a health issue and good things are happening, by the way. We actually had a really great uptick and she's going to get out of the hospital pretty soon. Probably even tomorrow. And so we're really happy about that. It's been almost 2 weeks, and many of you have known that. I haven't publicly talked about it, but there was a live show yesterday. I guess I did last week, talked about it a little bit on the radio. And it's been interesting because I've been there and visiting my mom and, you know, being at the hospital, and my aunt and uncle have come in town and they're very helpful. And so they've been instrumental in helping out as well. And it was interesting because, you know, I work every day, 6 days a week, and it's been challenging. So I'd go up there after work, and, you know, after work for me is getting over there about 7:30 at night, 7:45 every night. And that's kind of late, you know, but, you know, I'm managing it and I'm glad to be up there for a few hours and be able to see everybody. But the other day, I'd gotten home probably about 7:45, was going to feed Buddy, and Buddy happens to be in the studio, by the way. He's actually doing really good. He's sitting on the studio couch right now over there by George. I'm really proud of him. We'll have to take a little bit of pictures and stick him in the live feed, but I don't know. He could get up at any moment, but right now he's doing good. But anyway, so I got home about 7:45, and I realized, okay, I have a 45-minute drive ahead of me to get to the hospital. I better start, you know, booking it. It's raining outside. It's kind of crazy. I need to feed Buddy, and then I need to leave. And so I'm about to do that. I'm about to feed him, and it's just overwhelming to me. It's like I see the rain pouring, and earlier that morning I had awakened and found out that someone, not a close friend, but somebody that I did like and I did think was a very nice person, had passed away at 4:45 a.m. that morning, the same morning, in an auto accident, in a high-speed auto accident. And that kind of came into my mind. The fact that it was raining, the fact that it was, it was already dark, the fact that I had a situation in the car the other day. I actually snapped some sort of cord that connects the airbag and the buttons and everything to the steering wheel. So I don't have any horn anymore or any airbag working anymore. But, I was thinking about that too. And it was just, and I think the culmination of also being pretty exhausted, all kind of coupled together in that perfect storm, where I started thinking, maybe this isn't the best idea. I was there yesterday. I'm going to be there tomorrow. I wonder if this is the best idea. And I started thinking about all those different things. And it was interesting how I thought about Tony in the accident and him passing on. And I felt for him. And then I thought about the situation with my steering wheel and the situation I have with no horn. And if somebody does cross into your lane or do anything, you just got to get out of the way because there's no horn to use. All of those things started kind of coming into play. And the rain, and how the rain was coming down even thicker and harder. And so my gut was telling me this isn't the best thing to do. My gut was telling me, you know what, Ashley, you need to, hold out, be there tomorrow and move on. But then all of a sudden that guilt program showed up. And I think that many of you listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about. When that guilt program shows up, you feel it. When that guilt program shows up, you're like, oh, you know what? His accident was a separate situation and it wasn't me. Okay. The fact that he died in that accident, hey, that God bless him. And that's a horrible situation, but that's not you. Then I thought about the steering wheel and the situation. Well, you're a great driver. You can jump out of anything. You'll be fine. You don't need the horn. The horn is just a crutch, and then I was thinking about, what? You just get in the car and go. The rain is just the rain. You've driven in the rain a million times. This is nothing. And it was like, all the gut instinct was I was trying to push it all under the rug, just go through it, deal with it, move on. And it kind of hit me because I realized, this is the kind of stuff that, I work with. I mean, maybe at a different level with my clients, but, the programming that we get into with the toxic relationships, the programming that we get into with the trauma bonds, the programming we get into with the family dynamic, the codependent programming. But this is a program, much like other programs, right? That guilt program. And I realized, Ashley, you know what? Come on, snap out of it for a moment. Start seeing the reality of this guilt program. And so I got on the phone with my mother and my aunt, and we talked it out, and they were fine. My mother had been through a tough night the night before, and she was pretty sleepy and needing to get some sleep. And I kind of figured, you know what, that's probably a good idea. I need to stay home. And it was already almost 8:00 at this point. And so I remember we all talked, we got through the conversation. I felt okay. I still felt guilty. And I remember at the end of the conversation, I'll see you tomorrow. And I was there last night. But at the same point, that guilt. And I remember getting off the phone and I stood there in the kitchen, and it was funny because it's like for a moment, my guilt had taken over where I'm able to now eat dinner, but then all of a sudden I can't seem to go into action and make dinner because the guilt. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think many of y'all have been there where it's like the inability to act based on whatever programming is happening, that inability to act. So for about 10 minutes, I kind of stood around. I thought about things. I hem-hawed around, I could have been making something, but I didn't. And I just kind of sat there. I'd already fed the dog, Buddy, and we, that was good. So he's taken care of. But then eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, it's time to make something to eat. I'm going to go sit down. But I saw how deeply embedded the program of guilt is for me. And I've been working on it at many different levels in my life. But I think that when you go back to this program, and I think this is interesting, growing up, and we all have to figure out how the program began or how we saw it, right? We all have to figure out how it got so deeply embedded. Growing up as a child, my mother was always there for me health-wise. I had a particular health issue that nobody understood, and it wasn't diagnosed till after I guess it wasn't diagnosed until I was of legal age, and so it was a lifetime of not knowing, a lifetime of no answers. And she was there for a lot of that. And I think that goes back to seeing her there every day, all day, in every hospital situation. And then there was that guilt that magnified for me. And so I think that many of you listening, whether you're listening on the radio, on USA Radio Networks, or you're watching on the live stream on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, have understood and can connect with that. Because I feel like when we go through these programs, we don't really give it enough understanding. We don't really see it for what it is. We don't understand the impact that it has on our life. And we don't understand what that actually does to us. And there's a lot of programs that are running in our day-to-day life, whether they're guilt powered, whether they're people pleasing powered. Many of us have programs, correct, that we've created to people please, right? Because we want to make everybody happy. We want everybody to love us. We want everybody to care about us because, if we do everything for everybody all the time, they're going to be there for us, or they're going to love us. And that's what we've seen that we need to do to keep people there, right? There's a lot of different reasons why we have these programs. There's a lot of reasons in how they are powered. And so we're going to talk about that here in just a bit. Later on in the hour, by the way, don't forget Dan Nelson's going to And because history does repeat itself, we learn from history, right? We learn what not to do. We learn what happened before. All these things are very important. And if we want to actually know what's happening, we have to actually look back to what happened in the past to get a better understanding. And so that's why I really enjoy Dan on the show, talking about his various things, because a lot of the stuff that Dan talks about is not stuff that you can really find just by Googling. I mean, Google is a great search engine, don't get me wrong, but there's not a lot that some of the stuff he has to really dig into. And when he's doing some of this history for the different families that he works on these large books to go all the way back in time for the family, and understand that he comes across these stories that a lot of times we wouldn't have otherwise. So we'll be talking with Dan later on toward the end of the third segment. But in the meantime, we're going to be breaking down some of these programs, okay? We're going to find out what's happening in these programs. We're going to think about the things that you should be aware of. We're going to look at energy level and feelings, and we're going to understand where the programs are wrapped around. Many of us have programs. The way we talk to our family is a program. Many of us have programs. The way we handle ourselves is a program. Maybe sometimes the way we take care of ourselves, we're not good at self-care. We put everybody else first. We put ourselves last. We're constantly underestimating. We're constantly maybe even devaluing our own emotions. A lot. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I know that we're having some live stream issues again. We're trying our best. We can't control Spectrum. We'd like to be able to. It looks like today we're having a few issues, but we'll see. Hopefully we can hang in there today, and it's not helping us out, but we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, we'll go through this. We'll look at the various programs. We'll look at how it's running our life. We'll look at how that's powered. And taking my idea of my guilt program, I hope that relates and you can understand a bit about your program so we better understand it. We can diagnose it, just basically break it down, understand it, and you be able to understand where that's coming from. Is that the codependent tendency, or where does that come from? And also, better yet, where was it learned? Because that's things that we need to know. So stay tuned. Got a great show for you. We got 3 more segments left here. So don't leave. Don't change the channel. It's not time yet. We're still on. So stay with us, because live your true life perspectives. Yeah, me, Ashley Burgess. I got a great show for you. So stay here. We're going to be talking about programming, how to overcome it, how not to get frustrated, and how to override it. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. Will be back in. I'll be back this time, in 2 shakes. You doing good? Commercials are up.
Hey, luckily the live stream on YouTube didn't go down.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Which one's the other one? Should be fine too.
Which one's going down?
None of them. Like in there it said it was going down, but when I was listening to it, it didn't.
It's really weird how that does it.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so cute.
I got all of them up.
Hey, Wileen, good to see you. Lavina, great to see you. How are y'all doing? Thanks for tuning in today on the live stream. Holiday Holly, great to see you. How are you doing? Carr, great to see you. How are you doing? Glad to see you. Melinda, how is your day so far? Exo Mama, how are you doing? Good to see you. Shampa, good to see you. I love that. 2 years back, you started watching the videos, and from now on, you've been here. Well, I'm just glad that you're having you here. I know we've been having a few issues here. Hopefully, the connectivity will stay. Just glad that you're here, Shampa. Glad to have you here for sure. Thank you so much for tuning in. Naz, great to see you. Great to see you. How are you doing? The Rock, great to see you. Thank you. Good subject. I like that. Let's see. Paula. What if your beloved son doesn't want to talk to you because you can't let him live with you? I'm having a hard time being happy not knowing where he is. Oh, okay. That's the tough situation, Paula. Yeah, that's definitely a good subject that we could talk about. Boundaries are important, though, and we can't have healthy relationships without boundaries. And sometimes boundaries are tough. And and most of the time, boundaries are not easy because most of the time it's the right thing to do, but it's challenging because it's painful for us to do. So definitely, I understand where you are and your emotional conundrum, but think about why you created that boundary. Look at reasons for it, and really start analyzing that. And eventually, he'll need to understand that is that you're trying to preserve what you're needing to preserve, and there needs to be a way to create that relationship where both people feel empowered. We can talk more about that. This thing just keeps going out over and over and over again. Jody, thanks for tuning in. Melinda, thank you for tuning in. Okay, it only cuts out for a few seconds. Okay, good. Thank you so much. We're hoping that's all it does. We're doing our best. It's set up to the Ethernet and everything, so I'm not really sure. Paul, I'm glad that I could. Glad to acknowledge you for sure. Here we go. We're going back live. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I've been talking about the guilt programming and doing the right thing, and how guilt programming, quite honestly, is like all other programming. It's embedded. It's embedded. You know what I'm saying? It's like real. It's like in there. It's like when we deal with this programming, it's so amazing because you know what? It's like rapid fire. It's the things we've always done, right? It's interesting sometimes when we're into programming. I was talking to someone earlier today, and I said, they were talking about how one of their relatives, talks about other people and gossips. To listen to it, but they find themselves listening to it, and they've done it their whole lives. And I said, hey, when your relative is gossiping about other people, does their voice inflection change, or does the speed of their voice pick up? And they were like, oh my gosh, you're right. Because a lot of times when we're in a program, we start doing things like, let's say it's a gossip program or whatever, our voice inflection will change because we've always talked like really rapid when we're talking about people, or maybe we talk really low when we're talking about people. You see what I'm saying? Like there's different programming. But again, remembering the programming is just all our self-sabotage. And so with my guilt programming, that was my self-sabotage. It's like the guilt was actually overriding the gut, right? So it's like, that's when you really know something's wrong. When guilt overrides gut, that's when we have a major problem, because your gut is saying no, screaming at you, don't do that, this is crazy, this is a bad idea, and you're over there like, well, I feel guilty, so I'm gonna do it anyway. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, what? I mean, Pray tell, where is the reality of that? But we all have it, right? We all do these crazy programs where we're like, man, and you look back at some of these things, well, I'm glad I lived through that. It's like, I'm glad I lived through that. I mean, why did we have to put ourselves through this type of persecution? But I get it. We do it because guess what? We learned it. Okay. That's the about this type of stuff. First off, things that we need to be aware of. Okay, so when we're looking at programming and we're trying to disarm the program and we're trying to recognize the program first, I want you to think about is the reason why we create a program is to make a situation okay that's not really okay. Okay, we only create programs. So think about it. Let me give you an example. Let's say for example, you became super codependent and when you were a child. And let's say dad was maybe an alcoholic or what have you, and you were constantly taking care of him. You did that to fulfill a role a lot of times because you felt like that's what you needed to do. Perhaps if you were in a very violent household and you became super OCD, that was your way of controlling your room or your environment because of feeling out of control. Okay, so that became the program, right? So we create programs usually to make situations better that aren't better. We make them better just by creating the program because we basically override the fact that we don't really want to be dealing with it. So we create this different program to just be okay and accepted. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's like when you're feeling stress or you're feeling anxiety or you're feeling weird or you're not feeling yourself or you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling fear, there might be a program wrapped around that because there's no programs. When we're solidly healthy, there's no programs because what we're doing is we're unearthing and excavating these programs to figure out what the programs are. The only way we can get to our true self, living our true life, is to actually get through those programs. Because remember, when we were first born, there was nothing wrong with us. Nothing. It was just layers and layers and layers of stuff that was stuck on top of us as we went through that process that caused our stress and anxiety and caused these programs and caused this anxiety and caused this OCD and caused this PTSD and caused all these things. You didn't have that in the beginning. Okay, so basically what we're trying to do is we're just trying to take layer by layer off so we can get back to the original you. That's what this whole show is about. Once you figure that out, everything else is, well, it's great. There's no problems. We're just taking away the stuff that no longer serves you, okay? So we got a lot to talk about in today's show. Don't turn it. Don't turn it. If you're listening on the radio or you're watching us on the live feed, either way, you are here and we're glad to have you. Dan Nelson will be here in this next segment with his historical perspective, okay? And we're going to be talking more about programming and figuring them out. Stay tuned because Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back. And I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Marking that down.
Oh, that's good. Did you write it down?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay, guys, we're gonna grab Dan and bring him in here. Bring him in the studio. Yes, I am I think it's because I'm so hot today. We had the heat on at the office. I'm just glowing. I'm just glowing, guys. Just glowing. It's not sweating. It's glowing. Come on now. Oh, will you move this chair for me? I kind of rinsed my back.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And it's just not, you are such a good boy.
Yeah, he is real good.
Like, I like to be on the show. We'll bring him on the show. Buddy's going to come on the show and talk. I don't know about what.
He'll give his wisdom, whatever it is.
Does he want to go? Should we put him up? While Dan's here?
Maybe.
Let's do that. He's great. Pull that flag down. Dan, you can jump in whenever you want.
Let you have dogs in your building?
Did you say something?
I said they let you have dogs in your building?
I hope so. It's mine.
You're in over there where used to be 7-Eleven, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't live in a place that doesn't allow dogs.
I used to go in that building when 7-Eleven was there, meet with them. It was funny because you'd have the 7-Eleven people in their flip-flops, and then my daughter, sort of our third daughter, if you will, she worked for Thompson McKnight, so they're all three-piece and really bugged out.
We'll talk about that more. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we'll talk about more of that later. How was your segment? Was it good?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the richest man in America.
Who's that?
Augustine Warner. It was way back then.
No, we're not talking about. Oh, we got to test your mic.
Test my mic. Make sure that the volume's good. Make sure the sound's good. I'm getting the right levels.
So we're not talking about the Amazon guy.
The Amazon guy, which was that? Oh, no, that's
Bezos.
Today's richest. No, this was back in the 1600s. I do history, not current.
I know.
I do have another one about the 12th Amendment, which is sort of interesting, but it's probably 2 episodes.
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
I just come across this guy.
Spot?
Nope, I did not. Wow. What a natural voice. Should I become a professional voiceover person?
You can.
I can do cartoons with Jerry Seinfeld and
Yeah, so I'll do a little bit of the programming. What do you think you need? 8 minutes?
yeah, just do your thing so I can see how much time I have, and I'll be on it. And you split.
I got you.
Yeah.
Is he up in his whole thing?
Yeah, in his cage.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about me.
Okay, 1 minute, and then I see some of y'all have questions. I will definitely jump back in. We have about a minute till we go back.
Yeah, there's like A celebrities, B and C.
Definitely breaking
I'm
out of
an
the
F
programming is
celebrity.
important.
Lowest level. Okay, D minus.
Holiday Holly, good to see you. That's a good point. I appreciate that point. Car, good to see you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. Parents. Yeah, and I like what Holiday Holly said. Since her mom's passing, doesn't put up with guilt trips like I used to. But yeah, but it took her to pass to see it and see the guilt that you were dealing with.
Looks like a dog leash cord.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We're talking about programming. I know. Oh my gosh. It's the Mojave program. It's the DOS program, whatever. It's interesting, that's why they create these new operating systems, right? To override the old operating systems, because the new operating systems can take care of the problems in the old operating systems. And it's interesting how many of us don't realize that we can upgrade our personal operating system, right? And that's what I'm talking about today, is like when we're dealing with programs, these old programs that most of the time that we have, they started at a very early age and they were created out of necessity. They were created out of survival. And I find that some of these are created. For example, some of y'all suffer, and I'm a recovering codependent, but some of you might be recovering codependents as well, or some of y'all are still dealing with codependency. But that was a program that was created to deal with the situations that were in the household dynamic. Instead of yelling and screaming and telling your parents or family that you are out of here, you're no longer accepting this BS, you decided to basically kind of just configure yourself into the codependent, because you're like, well, I'll take care of these people. Okay. There's multiple programs that are out there. If you can do it, you can have a program of it, right? So it's like, how many do we have embedded on top of each program? And today, the reason why I'm doing this show is because I want to just get you to see the program and try to see where there are programs. Okay, the first thing is initially is recognizing the fact that they exist. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for a complete, dissection of said program. 7 pages of journal entry, submitted to me overnight. I'm not asking for that. But what I am asking for is, what is the program? Have you felt upset, angry, sad, burdened, frustrated, irritated? Okay, I want you to think about what I just said. Have you felt that way recently? Because I want you to go to the most recent situation you have, and what was going on? Were you hanging out with somebody you didn't want to hang out with? Were you taking a call from an ex that you didn't want to have? Were you taking, what was going on that? What were you doing that you did not want to participate and do? What were you doing, or how are you acting in a way that you don't want to, that's not at your highest good, that you don't feel good doing that is not your self, it's not your nature? Okay, was there something that override your gut? Did you do something that you knew was a bad idea and you still did it? And you put yourself, even if you're like, well, it wasn't really that harm's way. But think about it. A lot of times when we override our gut, that goes back to an old program that we had. That old program is based on whatever it's guilt, shame, whatever that is. And then underneath it, it's that self-sabotage. See, it's multi-level programming. This is not simple stuff. If it was simple stuff, that's why I deconstructed my recent program that I came across on Thursday. This is recent stuff here. That's why I deconstructed that each little piece. And I showed you how, okay, because of that person's accident, and then the steering wheel situation, and then the late night, and then the rain, but then also how I knew all this stuff was telling me, bad idea, bad idea, bad idea. But then that guilt was like, oh, but you feel guilty. But the guilt should outweigh any sort of reality. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the key. And so that's what I want you to think about. Okay, so a lot of times when we're about to enter into our program, or we're in the middle of our program, our energy levels change. Okay, normally we feel exhausted. We feel stressed out. Maybe we feel discombobulated, like we can't think straight. Okay. And one of the things I want you to think about is anytime that you're going against your gut, anytime that you significantly say, you know what, I know that, you're thinking about what you really need to do. Remember, your gut is kind of that thing that checks us in and keeps us kind of doing the things that we probably need to do to keep ourselves alive. Okay, when we're going against that, we're in a total program. Now, what is the program and what are we doing in that program? Okay, if we find ourselves undermining and devaluing our own feelings and emotions, that's a big red flag. Now, I know that some of you listening on USA Radio Network, some of y'all listening around the country on the radio, some of you watching the live feed right now, you say, okay, Ashley, devaluing my thoughts and feelings the other day, but it's not that different because I've been raised in an environment, or I'm married to somebody that doesn't really listen to how I feel and doesn't really care about how I feel or my emotions anyway. And so that's another thing too, is remembering the programming can also mimic where you are in that family dynamic. But when we're devaluing our own feelings and emotions, that's a red flag. Because that's putting us last. That's not even taking into consideration how we feel. That's a problem. That's total self-sabotaging and ignoring of our basic feelings and emotions. And remember, if we don't pay attention to our basic feelings and emotions and understand, how do we expect other people to pay attention to our basic feelings and emotions and to accept that? And if we're not willing to accept and to respect and to understand our actual feelings and emotions, how do we expect anybody else to respect or anything? Because we're not really putting anybody to do that, because we don't even have our own self doing it. So we're not even doing it for ourselves, much less asking someone else to do it or expecting someone else to do it. And so we're going to be talking more about that before the end of the show, because I want you to understand how to really begin to see it, because the programming can be frustrating. It's like a cycle pattern, right? It's like when we go into a toxic relationship and we get out of it, but then we find ourselves in another one, but then we get out of that one, then we find ourselves in another one. Well, that's also programming. It's based on the programming. It might be a cycle pattern, but it's based on a program that's in your head. that's creating that to feed into actually going into that relationship. No, whether or not it's a trauma bond, whether or not there's love bombing involved, whether or not it's a perfect storm or not, it doesn't matter. It's a program because there's something within us that creates that magnetic connection to want to have that because of whatever programming we have over here. If we're codependent and we're going with somebody in that situation, perfect storm. We'll talk more about that. But right now, because don't miss it, because at the very last part of the show, I'm going to give you some real tips on really how to connect with this, and also some really guideposts into really knowing, okay, how old is this program? How long has this been around? How do I go back and figure out where this started? Because that's very important. Knowing where something started is the beginning to let it go. You know what I'm saying? So Dan Nelson, our resident historian, is here today, and he's going to actually give us a historical perspective and something that, well, I don't know, something that I haven't even heard of, which is so great. It's stuff that I can't just go find, but Dan comes across these major cool stuff, and so he's going to share it with us because it's really timely and cool. Dan, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
So tell me more about what you have for us today with your historical perspective.
Yeah, so in this particular case, this is a guy that I kept coming across, and he's been an ancestor for multiple clients of mine, probably 3 or 4, and he's either their 10th, 11th, 12th great-grandfather. So if you sort of think in terms of generations, that gets you back to the late 1600s. And so this guy's name was Augustine Warner, and you won't say, oh, yes, of the famous Warner family, not tied to Warner Brothers or anything like that I know about. But he arrived in Jamestown in 1642, and he had 12 new settlers for the Virginia colony. And those colonists cause you to be given head grants. I think we've talked about those before, but you basically get acreage based on the fact that you transported people over here. So he did that. And he got his 600 acres, and then he went ahead and added more acreage to it. And the place where he lived is called Warner Hall. And prior to his death, he had several thousand acres. He died in 1674. So during his time, he was very involved in civic duties. He was Justice of York, Gloucester, a member of the King's Council in Virginia. And then he had a lot of tremendous progeny in terms of he was the great-great-grandfather of George Washington. Everybody likes to be tied to George Washington, right? Add some more greats for Robert E. Lee, and then a bunch more greats to somebody who's alive today and was on TV this morning, Queen Elizabeth. So people go like, Queen Elizabeth, wait, you're talking about an American guy. How could Queen Elizabeth's ancestor, aren't they all like royal people hanging out in Europe? And it's like there's actually an American ancestry to the Queen. Winston Churchill also had American ancestors. His mother was American. So just because everybody came over here didn't mean nobody ever went back. Especially if you got a chance to be queen. Why would you stay here, right? Exactly. But so his son, Augustine Warner Jr., who was also a pretty famous guy, he inherited Warner Hall when his dad died. And he further developed it, made it into a bigger setup. And he was also a big deal on the King's Council, Speaker of the House of Burgesses, which was like Congress for Virginia at the time. And yeah, and clearly Ashley's family was tied into the Burgesses. When one of the things that happened when he was there at Warner Hall, there was a rebellion called the Bacon's Rebellion. Had nothing to do with pork or anything like that. It was a guy named Nathaniel Bacon, and he didn't like the way Virginia was being governed. And he led a big rebellion and probably would have ended up getting executed, but he died and left those hanging around holding the bag for his troubles that he created. But while Bacon was leading his rebellion, they actually ransacked Warner Hall. And so it was sort of funny because they took goods that Warner claimed were worth 845 pounds, which the way they expressed things back in those days was that's what 40 slaves or servants would produce in a year. So it was a big case, litigation between this guy and a William Byrd who sort of backed Bacon. And so I shared this story with a group of people that I'd done ancestries on both these CEO types. And so one's like, I want reparations. You ripped off my grandpa. And the other guy's statute of limitations. So the lawsuit did not get re-engineered. So Augustine Warner himself actually died pretty young. He was 39. So he had everything to live for, but he died at 39. So he had 3 daughters, Mary, Mildred, and Elizabeth. Mary went on to marry a guy named John Smith, who was a member of what they called the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe. And those were guys that bravely rode across the mountains to battle the Indians. But the most famous daughter of all in terms of her ancestry, she married Lawrence Washington. So here we are again, back to the Washingtons. And their son, Augustine, married Mary Ball, and they became the proud parents of George Washington, which I won't explain to everybody who George Washington is, because hopefully you know. But George was actually named after his great-grandfather, George Reed, who was the founder of Yorktown. So I'm excited. I don't know if my wife is. We're going back there in the fall to Yorktown so I can check all that kind of stuff out. And then Elizabeth, the third daughter, she married a guy named John Lewis. And the Lewis family ended up actually inheriting Warner Hall. So that's why there's no Warner family with that last name involved. For many years, it was the Lewis family that sort of took over and expanded it more. But one of the Lewises was a guy named Fielding Lewis, and he ended up marrying Betty Washington, who was a sister of George Washington. So those ties kept getting connected to the Washington family. So today you could actually go back and stay at Warner Hall. A fire destroyed the original 17th century home, but they rebuilt it, the Lewis family, and you can stay at the inn. The last family that sort of owned it before it became an inn was the Cheney family. It has nothing to do with Dick Cheney that I know of. Who knows, but he hasn't asked me to research his ancestry. But anyways, if you want to be a little bit in touch with history and I guess sleep in the same piece of land that George Washington or somebody may have slept on, Warner Hall is a place that you can go. But I just thought it was interesting that you've never heard of this guy, and yet his home, his property, still survives to this day and is in his name. And he was the ancestor to so many interesting and exciting people like George Washington, Robert E. Lee, and our Queen Elizabeth.
That is pretty interesting. How do you find all this? Is this when you come across, other people's stories and you're kind of working with them for their history, and then you kind of come across these different types of people and how they intersect?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Is so I'll get a little snippet and then I'll say, and then I'll go further, and then I'll go further. I was working on another story that I'll get on one of these future shows, but every time I went to another story, I said, well, that's a story in itself. So you have to learn where to cut these up, because we could sit here and talk about George Washington or Queen Elizabeth, but you sort of gotta cut them off so that they'll fit into the show. But that's exactly how it is done. One builds upon the other, and then you have to decide, because most of these go into people's family history books. Where do you cut it off? What's relevant to their family history versus just an interesting historical story, but not necessarily tied to them. So that's part of experience and art to figure out how to cut that off and how to include it. No different than your shows. You could go on forever, but you got to find stuff that's appropriate to what you're talking about.
It's true. We could go on forever and ever and ever. Some of you would be like, no, please don't.
I feel guilty. Stop it. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to feel guilty.
Right. Yeah. The inner battle. I think people would eventually drop off there. There wouldn't be enough food or supplies,
Yeah, it'd be like a siege.
I mean, you got the Breaking Bad, like, what is it, where they have like the 20 in a row or something like that. It's amazing what people will watch. It's like, I watched the 30 of these in a row. It's like,
I haven't heard of binge radio listening, but maybe that's a thing. We could start it.
Let's find a tribe of people that want to do that. I don't know how big the tribe will be.
A binge history stories,
We could do binge history and psychological self-help.
Yeah,
it could be interesting.
It could be a thing.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good combination. I think we're already doing it, though.
We are.
Pretty good. Hey, stay tuned, guys. We'll be back. Live your true life perspectives. I'll be talking more about programming. We got to hear some amazing history, and he'll be back next week as well. So don't forget, we'll be talking about more programming, how to understand it, how is it powered, but better yet, how the cycles and patterns are created from this programming and how we can begin to stop it. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. 2 shakes. Good work. Good work. Dan is awesome. Okay, let's see. What have I missed here? JJ JJ. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up your name. I hope I'm saying it right. Tracy. Yes, this is good. Car. Realized I've been programmed throughout my life. I went into shock, disbelief. Saw the truth. This is powerful. Paula, this is powerful. My program is 40 years old. Time to upgrade. I love this. My gut was telling me to stay away from my family. That was my only way to truly be free. But guilt made me stay in, and all just went to hell. And because I knew better. Yeah, sometimes we leave toxic family dynamics, and we feel like it's the best thing we should do for ourselves, but then we feel guilty about doing it. That's your new spot again.
Oh.
On one of them, I guess we did like 4, right?
Well, what I'll do is next Saturday is I'll listen to the pre-record and I'll hear the spots.
Oh, that's right.
Because I can't do it. It's nice actually sitting out there. I hear you. I don't hear the commercials, but if I listen on Facebook, you get the feedback.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I can't listen to it while you're doing it.
You don't want to have like.
Yeah, it's just, actually early on, you guys told me to be careful with that.
Yeah, we were probably having feedback from here too. We were probably having feedback too, right? All kinds of feedback. Feedback. Right?
Are you chronically less challenged this week?
Well, it's going in and out. It's going in and out a little bit. So folks are just being kind because they're saying it's only for a few seconds.
Yeah,
But the feed's going out on this one.
on mine it just fades to black and then literally 1 second later it just comes back. So you can still kind of figure out the signs that you're saying.
Okay.
Better than last time where it was like a chunk of 15 seconds or whatever.
Well, part I know is what you do is you repeat stuff anyways to make sure people get it. So that probably is easier. A little piece gets left out. They pick it up and you repeat it.
I'll repeat it. Yeah, I repeat things.
Yeah, I think it's good because people miss it the first time and it emphasizes what's important.
I need to get a headset that has a longer.
Get a dog leash one like this, which is nice. You know, at first I thought, is it tangled up with the?
Not hilarious.
Looks like it might be stronger.
I haven't ever seen a headset though made like that.
Well, now you know what to ask for Christmas.
Have somebody make one.
You can, yeah. There's people that do all that stuff. I'm getting 4 remote controls for hoist for the bikes in the new house, getting longer cords spliced in so that you don't walk in the garage and get hit in the head by remote controls.
Oh,
Electricians can do all that kind of stuff. They just got to know what the cord is.
that's gonna leave a mark.
Yeah, it would. Especially,
It's not so much here. It's just right here.
yeah,
What was that on Tommy Boy?
we'll do that thing where we walk in the garage in the dark and don't turn on the light. Think we're good and we know where we are until we fall on your face or hit something.
You can really get hurt that way. Good people can go down.
Yeah.
Good people.
That's that age where I'm sure I'll bounce, so I'll just try and avoid it in the first place.
I think we bounced when we were younger.
Yeah.
Well, we're all young. What am I saying? We're all young. We're fine.
Little kids are made of solid cartilage, you know. They can survive stuff.
Can't hear. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. How are you doing? We're back. And I was having a little bit of problem hearing, actually, here. My good old headset that I need to replace. It's been around for a long time. I like to have headsets. So I almost feel like I'm one of those people that go to the games, right? You go to the games, like the football games. Well, I mean, back when we used to, I guess we're going to start doing some of this stuff again, I guess. But, people that wear the same socks, every game because, they're going to cheer on the team, but I got this same headset. So anyway, it's a little old. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we were talking about programming right before. Dan was giving us his historical perspective, which I thought was really cool because it's something that you just can't dig up on Google, even though Google is a great search engine. You can't always dig that kind of stuff up. And so we've been talking about those programs that are running day to day in our life. We're talking about those guilt-powered programs, those people-pleasing programs. We're talking about all that, the cycles and patterns. And, one of the things that I think is very interesting is we hear a lot of times people talking about, well, I realized I was in the cycle. I realized I was in this pattern of toxic relationships. And, or I realized that I was in this pattern of being in this family dynamic where, they just don't treat me well. And I keep going back. And each time I go back, I get treated worse and worse, but I feel like they're my family. And sometimes we can get confused on to titling, right? That's very confusing. Mom, dad, family can be very confusing because family and mom and dad are supposed to be, the most helpful people in our life. And sometimes, unfortunately, for some of you listening, they're the most unhelpful people in your life. And so the program to believe, the labels is what can be an intense program in your life that you have to let go of and see. And so it could be that pattern of going back and back and back and getting the same results, getting hurt again, feeling bad, feeling all that feeling again, having all that flood of negative emotion again, dealing with it, feeling unvalidated, feeling all those feelings and retreating again. And then over a period of time, feeling that guilt program and going back into it again and back and forth. And so you see how the programs actually are what really fuels and is the running machine in the background for the cycles and the patterns, right? Without that program, we wouldn't keep going through that same cycle. Without that program, we wouldn't continue to go through the same patterns, right? Because the breaking of the program is what breaks the other two. So it's like once we break the chains of the program, the cycle and the patterns fall down. They're gone because they're the product of the program. And so I want you to think about that when you're feeling frustrated, when you're feeling confused as to what to do. I know that if you're listening to the show, you're highly intelligent. You're probably very empathic. And you're a smart person and you have feelings. And so confusion with you is something that's not normal. So confusion to me is an indication that there's something up. There's information that we don't know, or you're trying to tell yourself that you're going to do something differently that's going against your gut or what you know is the best situation. I don't know. Maybe it's the right thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm judging. Maybe I'm misjudging the situation. Maybe I don't know all the information. Maybe I need more information. Okay. I've never found it out to really work. When we try to be the PI and different things in our life, the private investigator, usually that means that you already have the information. You just don't want to trust your gut. Okay. So, and when you're feeling guilty about anything, shame, any of those types of feelings, this is an indication that something is off. This is an indication that there is something that needs to be dealt with. And I've realized, like when I was going through that program a couple of days ago and I saw it, and then I started kind of feeling sad and then I felt guilty. I felt bad. And that guilt feeling, it's gross. And you start feeling that. You're like, why am I feeling guilty? I'm a good person. I do this stuff. I follow through. And now I'm going to judge myself based on one evening. I'm going to judge myself based on a 2-hour window of visitation. I'm going to base my whole value system on that. I'm going to base my value on that. I'm going to have guilt or not. It's crazy. But we do it all the time. And so I want you to be aware of that, being aware of those feelings. Being aware of those cycles and patterns, being able to see it, being able to understand it, and writing some of this stuff, journaling it. You can't just do it in your head. Journal this stuff out. If you haven't already, check out the website, ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com. Also, the YouTube channel. Also, I want to dedicate this show to Tony. Sorry, you're so young. I wish you wouldn't have passed. But we're here, and glad that you were able to be on this planet for a time. In the meantime, also check out the videos. Live Your True Life Perspectives. We'll be back this time in 3 shakes.
I forgot to stand up and have you read my shirt. Read my shirt. Sure thing. I get like at least one of these shirts every year for Christmas. Of course, I just want to walk around every day.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the live feed, by the way. So glad to have y'all tuning into the live feed. We just got off the radio. I just turned off the Lucy Live, which is our connection up to the station. So it's all good. It's all good. So glad that y'all are able to be here today. Thank you so much. Let's see, Nas. Good to hear from you. Yeah, because they're toxic. I understand that, dealing with toxic family dynamic. Do you really want people, do you really want that? Is that something that you really want? Do you really want them to meet those folks? See, that's a question. And it's like, maybe in the process before that happens, maybe there might be some healing. Maybe some people might, get to the plate and realize they need to do some work on their own programming. Maybe not. But we can't hold out for other people to change. Remember that? See, that's another thing too, is that, or we can't just keep, it's like, oh, we can't do all the work. We can do our own work for people, for ourselves, but we can't do it for other people. No fest archives, isolating us from friends, citing pandemic makes me feel guilty for bringing it up at all. Okay, yes, BPD partner isolating you from your friends, using the pandemic as a reason. Yeah. I mean, and then you feel guilty about bringing it up, right? Well, it's a pandemic. You get sick. You get other people sick. Yeah, that's true. But isolation is just as bad. Isolation's tough, man. Isolation does a number on people. I've seen more people get hurt from isolation during this pandemic. Yeah, and I've seen people die from COVID. I'm not saying that wasn't the case, but people with isolation, being isolated, was very painful. The depression levels skyrocketed. The use of drugs and alcohol skyrocketed. Okay, this is real. Mystique, great to see you. How are you doing? And if you need to talk, no fest, let me know. Mystique, great to see you. How are you doing? Car, so true. Parents programming can be very unhelpful. It can be. Paula, yes, can't stand confusion. Totally true. Confusion is usually an indication that something's up. Holiday Holly, great to hear from you again. This is great. Paula, great to hear from you. Glad to help, and I'm glad, and you are totally welcome, by the way. The programs don't work anymore. People fall apart. Then they have to reprogram and build themselves. Yes. Once the program stops working and you see the problem in the system, then you have to let it go. It's time. A lot of times we might try to sweep it under the rug. That's why sometimes we turn to escapism, because we don't want to deal with what it takes to let go of the program. I find that a lot of times when people realize what's really happening in relationships, they either do something about it, or they kick the can down the road, or, they turn to drugs or alcohol or something to disassociate and to numb, so that they don't feel it so much. And maybe if they do that enough, it won't be a big deal. But a lot of times we have to just deal with it, right? Because that's the only way. Eventually we got to deal with it. We kick it down the road for a while, and sometimes we have to go through that process to really know what we need to do. Mary, great to hear from you. You're so super awesome, Ashley. Hey, thank you. Gave relief to so much confusion and agony for me. How you gave, oh, great. God bless you, Infinity. God bless you too, Mary. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to help relieve some of the confusion, because you know what? Confusion keeps us in a state of inaction. When we're in a state of inaction, we're unable to do what we need to do in our life. And that state of inaction is usually, created because it's a fight between what we know to be true and what we know we need to do versus what we think we have to do based on the program. So I'm so glad to hear from you. Thank you so much for reaching out. Love your message. Naz, love your message. No fest. Okay. Yeah. And somebody that refuses to go to treatment, that's another thing. It's like, there's always a reason why they can't do something. And if we put ourselves in that relationship situation and we're tagged up to that person, something's got to give, because that's not the lifestyle that I could live. You know what I'm saying? And I've been there through processes of that a long time ago, but I've done it. And it was painful, but I knew that eventually either they had to do what they needed to do, I needed to do what I needed to do. It's easier said than done, but having some clarity and being able to sit back and understand your situation. And if you do need help, let me know, because I can really show you exactly what's really happening. Paula, yes, I have literally stopped waiting for people to change, waiting for that false hope future. That is awesome. Yes, that false hope is horrible. Holiday Holly, great to hear from you. JJ, great to hear from you. Let's see. What am I missing here? Just let go of the last ones this week. There are some ugliness as I face the fact that they actually enjoyed when bad things happen to me. When you see people enjoying and taking pleasure out of that, that's a sign that you're not with people that have your best interests at heart, no matter what the label is. Okay. I advise people, change the name. Mom and dad out of the phone, change it to their first names. Mary, you're that's so great. I love that. And Paula, great. Y'all are awesome. Thank you so much. Mary, thank you so much. Paula, thank you so much. Yeah, and it can be painful. And I'm just glad that everybody's being able to see this and understanding that, you're not crazy. You're a good person. You're solid. You feel this, and it's right to be honest with your feelings, and it's right to be true and to say, hey, I'm in odds with my feelings because of this program that's been embedded that I've had for a long time. But this program overrides what I know I need to do in my life. Right. And Mary, you got this. This is awesome. Paula, you got this. Yeah. Realizing what can happen can be quite painful. Then you have to decide if you still want to live with it or not. Mary, your video on BPD is brilliant and so interesting. It came to me at the perfect time in my life. I'm so glad that it did. Anytime that you're dealing with these types of situations, and I think that many of you understand when we're dealing with situations and circumstances, Urban Planet, great to see you, that you're here. Glad to have you here. It's just, we have to realize what we're dealing with. We have to understand. And there's a time when we finally understand exactly what we're dealing with, and we get it and we understand it and we get to the core of it. And then that helps us to understand why we're there. And then we turn it around and we start looking at us and why we're in that situation and why we chose that person. And why is this the perfect storm? And then we begin to understand a lot of things because, I believe that if we use things properly and we understand that, we can understand why somebody is in our life and why we chose it, because it's a learning experience. It's something that we had to learn, and it's powerful. So if we use it to the right reasons, sometimes we get stuck in it and enmeshed in it for a long period of time, but that time might have been what we needed to get enmeshed in to get to the other side, to get to that point of realizing that I want to be in a relationship with myself first, understand my own values, understand my feelings, and unconditionally love myself, and then eventually find someone that does respect my feelings, and we're connected. And it's not based on a codependent program or a BPD program or a cluster B program. Urban Planet, great to see you. JJ, great to see you. Denise, just found your content today. Thanks for helping me through a tough time. Glad that you're here. Glad to help you. Never let the hand hold you down, Mystique. I love that. Thank you for your videos, Mystique. Thank you so much. I'm just glad that everybody's tuned in today. I got to jump here in a second because I got to record another show. And I have some clients too. 6 days a week, guys, doing it. So I'm really happy to really be helping folks. And I'm just happy to connect with y'all. And that's what matters to me the most. And if y'all have some ideas on some concepts you want me to talk about, I definitely want to help out in any way, any sort of subject matters that you think are really good, that you would like me to touch on. Ashley, how did you start figuring it out? It's been a lifetime journey. I mean, as a kid, I'll have to tell that story sometime, but I grew up with a condition that nobody understood, almost died on the operating table 3 times, done this stuff, really kind of a painful life for a long time. And it really made me realize things that I think a lot of people don't have to realize because it's not part of their reality. And then I started seeing I really started looking at people's actions instead of their words, because a lot of people say whatever they say, but they don't actually follow the follow. And then I started realizing that I had to do that too. And then I started making really deep connections with people because I didn't know how long I was going to be here. And that's when I started realizing the human condition so well and being able to listen and understand exactly what people are going through and help people to find where they need to go and why they're there. Because I had to figure that out for myself, and I did. And so it's something I work on a daily basis. It's a good question. Definitely want to talk more about that at some point, Paula. And that's what's once we get on that path of understanding and clarity, things start, really opening up. But it takes us to look at those programs and to let go of that stuff and to be okay with excavating this stuff. That's really kind of scary, to be quite honest with you. And some of the stuff we're like, wow, what am I going to find out? But I'm here to tell you real quick. If you start working on this stuff, you're not going to find anything that's going to be bad. You're going to get clarity and understanding. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be bad. It's not going to be worse than it is. It's going to be better. So don't worry about what's going to come out of working on this. Just say, hey, when am I ready to start? Because guess what? I got to do it anyway. If I really want to be true to myself and be honest, but also the big part is, if I really care about myself, and this is the only reason we're here. Remember, purpose is not based on what we can do in life. Purpose is not based on what the money we can make, and purpose is not based on any of that. Purpose is actually based on how to get to know ourselves, and we have to learn about ourselves inside and out and how to appreciate, accept ourselves, and unconditionally love ourselves on a daily basis. That's purpose. That's why it's so hard. If it was easy to do, it wouldn't be considered purpose, right? And so that's what I'm here to help everybody do, and anything I can do. And I'm sure you're helping me, and I'm thankful for y'all helping me as well. Thank you so much, Paula, and take care of yourself as well. Let me know if I can help you with anything. Mary, let me know what I can. I'd love a video about this, dealing with my 23-year-old son rejecting me. If you can, if you get a chance, go to ashleyburgess.com and just click on that contact page and send me an email on what's going on. And I can definitely do a video on that and talk about that, because I think that would be a good video. Thank you, Mystique. I feel solid. I have pain like everybody does, but it was a lot going through it. It taught me a lot. It was grueling. It was intense, but I think that was my path, right? That was my path. So I had to do it. And I'm thankful for it. And thank you, by the way. Cesar, good to see you. Hello from New York City. Great to have you here. Mystique, Mary, Cesar, Paula, Carr, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all, love y'all, and just glad that y'all have connected with me today. And let me know if y'all need to contact or you want to reach out, just contact me. Go to ashleyburgess.com, click on that contact page. It's the easiest because it's going to go straight to my email, and all that great stuff. There's no way of it going into spam. Everything goes direct. So, just wanted to let you know that. And then any show ideas as well. So, and anything that you need help with, I'm right here. So you definitely, I will definitely respond. Y'all have a great day. Let me know if you need anything. JJ, thank you so much for reaching out. Y'all have a good one. Yes, Paula, you can send me an email as well. Yes, for sure. Yes, I look forward to hearing from all of y'all. Thank you so much. Have a great one. Any sort of video concept ideas that you want me to create, I'm here. I'm all ears. So y'all have a great one. Take care, and much love and respect. Bye, y'all.